Breaking news for millions of immigrants across the United States, as we are currently standing on the precipice of what could be the most transformative, chaotic, and potentially hopeful era in American immigration policy in over 35 years. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, alongside key legislative figures in Congress and the White House administration, has signaled massive structural changes that could fundamentally alter your immigration status forever. We are talking about shifts that could bring long-awaited hope to undocumented families who have been living in the shadows for decades and potentially offer the legal protection you have been waiting for, not just for months, but for years. If you or someone you love has been living in a state of constant grinding uncertainty, afraid of a knock on the door, terrified of a traffic stop turning into deportation proceedings, separated from family members due to rigid, unforgiving visa rules, or stuck in what feels like an endless, bureaucratic black hole of processing delays, you cannot afford to ignore this update. What I am about to share with you represents a historic turning point. June 2025 is shaping up to be a defining moment in U.S. history, with new legislative proposals, a potential drastic shift in executive orders regarding essential workers, and a real, tangible pathway to stability for the long-term undocumented community that keeps this country running. Do not click away and do not skip forward, because every single detail I reveal in this video, from the specific eligibility criteria of the Dignity Act to the new interview trap currently being deployed by USCIS officers, could directly determine whether you secure your future in America or face potential removal proceedings. Welcome back to U.S. Immigration Insight, your most trusted, detailed, and authoritative source for immigration news, visa bulletin updates, complex policy breakdowns, and everything you need to know about legally establishing your life, your career, and your family in the United States. Today, we are not just reading headlines. We are diving deep and conducting a full forensic analysis of the current state of immigration, covering the full spectrum from a major new legislative proposal called the Dignity Act that could provide legal status to millions of long-term undocumented immigrants, to exclusive reports of a potential executive order protecting essential workers, all the way to the operational reality of USCIS dramatically speeding up case processing and scheduling thousands of interviews after years of silence. This video contains critical, life-changing information that affects you whether you are undocumented, currently holding a temporary work visa like an H-1B, waiting for a marriage-based green card, preparing for an asylum interview, or simply trying to navigate the complex family sponsorship system for your parents or siblings. Before we break down the legalities, make sure you are subscribed to U.S. Immigration Insight and have hit that notification bell, because in this volatile political climate, immigration rules change overnight, and missing a single update from this channel can mean missing a deadline, missing a priority date, or missing a new opportunity to legalize your status. Let's begin with the development that has the entire immigration advocacy community and Washington insiders buzzing, which is the potential executive order regarding essential workers. For years, the conversation around undocumented immigrants has been focused on enforcement, but recently, the economic reality of the United States has forced a change in the conversation. According to multiple sources close to high-level Washington discussions, there is a serious debate occurring regarding the issuance of an executive order specifically aimed at protecting undocumented individuals who work in critical, essential sectors of the American economy. We need to understand why this is happening now, and it is not just humanitarian, it is economic survival. The United States is facing a demographic crisis with an aging workforce and low birth rates, and post-pandemic, there is a massive labor shortage that is fueling inflation and supply chain disruptions. Employers, from massive agricultural conglomerates to small construction firms, are desperate, and there is a growing recognition, even among conservative policymakers who typically favor strict enforcement, that deporting millions of essential workers would cause an immediate economic collapse in the United States. So, who is being discussed in this potential order? We are looking at the industries that effectively keep this country running. First, agriculture and farm work, where it is an open secret that the vast majority of the food on American tables, the fruits, the vegetables, the dairy, is harvested and processed by undocumented labor, and without these workers, food prices would skyrocket and crops would rot in the fields. Second, the hospitality and tourism sector, where hotels, restaurants, and service industries are currently facing a crippling labor shortage and cannot find enough workers to clean rooms, cook food, or staff resorts. Third, construction and infrastructure, because as the U.S. tries to rebuild its bridges and roads, the skilled and unskilled labor from immigrant communities is absolutely essential to getting these projects done. And fourth, healthcare support services, which includes home care aides for the elderly and nursing assistants, because as the American population ages, the demand for these difficult, low-paying jobs is exploding, and immigrants are the ones stepping up to do the work. The rationale behind this potential executive order is to bring these workers out of the shadows, and while nothing has been officially signed, and we must be careful not to spread false hope, the discussion revolves around using executive authority to grant something called parole in place, or deferred action, for these specific workers. What would this mean for you practically? It is important to manage expectations because this would likely not be a green card immediately, and likely not be full citizenship, but it would be a shield. It would mean protection from deportation, so you would no longer be a priority for removal and could drive past a police car without your heart stopping. It would mean work authorization, EAD, so you would receive a valid employment authorization document to work on the books, get better wages, and have labor rights protections. It would mean a social security number for tax and employment purposes, and in most states, a driver's license, which transforms your daily life and mobility. This is a pragmatic solution that bridges the gap between the rigid letter of the law and the economic reality of the United States, acknowledging that you are here, you are working, and you are essential. Now let's move from executive action to the legislative side and talk about the Dignity Act, which is set to be reintroduced and championed by Republican Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar on or around June 25, 2025. This is arguably the most serious, well-thought-out attempt at comprehensive immigration reform since the amnesty of 1986. Congresswoman Salazar, who represents a district in Florida with a massive immigrant constituency, knows that the immigration system is broken, and she has crafted this bill to be what she calls filibuster-proof, designing it specifically to gain bipartisan support, meaning she wants both Democrats and Republicans to vote for it. But to get that support, the bill makes a controversial trade-off that you need to understand fully. The Dignity Act proposes a new legal status called dignity status for undocumented immigrants who meet specific, rigorous criteria. This is not a free pass. It is a rigorous 7-year program. Here is exactly who would qualify under the current proposal. First, you must have lived in the United States continuously for at least 5 to 10 years, targeting long-term residents and not new arrivals. Second, you must have a clean criminal record with no felonies and no significant misdemeanors, meaning a DUI or a violent crime would likely disqualify you. Third, you must pay a restitution fee because the bill acknowledges that entering the country illegally or overstaying a visa was a violation of civil law. So to make amends, applicants would pay a fine, likely spread out over several years, to fund border security and American worker training programs. Fourth, you must be employed or a caregiver to show you are contributing to the economy. And fifth, and perhaps most importantly, you must pay any back taxes owed. So if you have been working under the table, you would need to get an ITIN number and settle your debt with the IRS. If you meet these requirements and enter the program, your life changes instantly because the Dignity Act offers you full legal status, the ability to work legally, and the ability to live without the fear of ICE raids. But remarkably, it includes a provision that is often overlooked: international travel. The bill proposes allowing dignity status holders to travel outside the U.S. and return legally. So pause for a moment and think about what that means. For millions of you watching this, you haven't seen your mother in 15 years, you missed your father's funeral, or you haven't met your nieces and nephews because you have been trapped in the U.S., unable to leave because you knew you could never come back. This bill would end that separation and allow families to reunite. However, here is the catch and the poison pill that makes this bill controversial. The Dignity Program does not provide a direct, automatic pathway to citizenship. Under this specific track, you would be a permanent legal resident in a special category, protected, safe, and authorized to work, but you would not be able to vote in U.S. elections. Why did Salazar design it this way? It is purely strategic because she argues that removing the citizenship aspect removes the primary objection from conservative Republicans who view citizenship as a sacred reward that should not be given to those who broke immigration laws. By taking citizenship off the table, Salazar believes she can get enough Republican votes to actually pass the bill into law. So, for many of you watching, the question is a difficult one. Would you trade the right to vote for the right to live without fear? And would you accept a status that makes you legal, but perhaps not fully American in the civic sense, in exchange for the safety of your family? For millions of undocumented immigrants who just want to work and raise their children in peace, the answer is a resounding yes. There is a secondary track in the bill called the Redemption Program, which is an optional additional 5-year program after the Dignity Program that could lead to citizenship. We are seeing field offices in major hubs like New York City, Houston, Los Angeles, Chicago, Newark, and Miami, scheduling interviews at rates we haven't seen in a decade. With asylum cases that have been stuck in limbo since 2017 suddenly moving, marriage-based green card petitions filed just 6 months ago getting interview notices, and employment authorization cards being approved in 30 to 60 days in some categories. This sounds like incredible news, and for well-prepared applicants with straightforward cases, it is fantastic news because it means your wait is over and you can move on with your life. However, there is a hidden danger here that I must warn you about, which I call the interview trap. Faster processing means faster scrutiny because when USCIS is moving quickly, they are also denying quickly, and the acceleration is partly due to a new, risk-based approach where USCIS is waiving interviews for many employment cases and some parent sponsorship cases to save time, but they are reallocating that time to focus intensely on marriage-based fraud. If you are applying for a green card through marriage, listen to me. The interview environment has changed, it is hostile, it is rigorous, and officers are digging deeper than ever before. It is no longer enough to just show a marriage certificate, a lease, and a few photos of your wedding, because officers are now frequently conducting what are known as Stokes interviews or separation interviews, even for initial cases if they spot a single red flag. Imagine this scenario. You arrive at the USCIS field office, the officer calls your name, but instead of inviting you and your spouse back together, they say, "I want to speak to the beneficiary alone first." Your stomach drops as you are separated, and the officer takes you into a windowless office and begins to ask extremely specific, intrusive questions. They are not asking, "When did you get married?" but rather, "What color are the curtains in your bedroom?" "Who woke up first this morning, you or your spouse?" "What did you have for dinner last Tuesday?" "What brand of toothpaste sits on your bathroom sink right now?" "Which side of the bed do you sleep on?" "Show me your keys and tell me which key opens the mailbox." Or, "Does your spouse have any scars or tattoos?" Describe them. Then they bring in your spouse and ask the exact same questions. And if your answers do not match, if you say the curtains are blue and he says they are white, or if you say you ate pizza and she says you ate tacos, your case will be flagged for fraud, and you could face a notice of intent to deny, no ID, and eventually deportation proceedings. The speed up at USCIS means you have less time to prepare than you thought, and you cannot wait until you get the interview notice to start gathering evidence because you might get a notice saying your interview is in 3 weeks, which is not enough time to build a strong case if you haven't started. So, what do you do with all this information? And how do you protect yourself and your family in this changing landscape? Here is your step-by-step roadmap. Step 1 is the paper trail strategy. If you potentially qualify for the Dignity Act, or if you are waiting for a current case, start gathering documentation immediately and do not wait for the bill to pass. Proof of presence is vital, so you need to prove you were here for the last 10 years by finding old rent receipts, utility bills with your name on them, old bank statements, and cumulative school records for your children. Collect medical records like vaccination records and hospital discharge papers, and get affidavits from your pastor, imam, neighbors, or employer stating they have known you for 10 years. Create a physical binder organized by year to make it undeniable that you have been here. Step 2 is the tax cleanup, which is the most boring but most critical step because almost every path to legalization will require a history of paying taxes. If you have been working for cash, you can still file taxes by applying for an ITIN, Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, and consulting with a tax professional who specializes in immigrant taxes. Do not be afraid that filing taxes will get you deported, because the IRS is prohibited by law from sharing your tax data with ICE for immigration enforcement purposes. Filing back taxes now could be the key to unlocking your green card later. Step 3 is to audit your social media, which is a modern trap because USCIS officers and consular officers look at Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you are applying for a marriage green card, but your Facebook status says single, or you only post photos partying with other people and never your spouse, or if you are applying for a tourist visa but posting about working in the US, those are red flags, so clean up your digital footprint. Step 4 is the anti-scam warning, because whenever news like this breaks, predatory scammers emerge. In many Latin American communities, they are called notarios, but please listen to me. In the United States, a notary public is not a lawyer and cannot give legal advice. If someone tells you to give them $5,000 cash to put your name on the list for the Dignity Act, run away because there is no list, and if someone guarantees you a green card, they are lying. Only work with licensed immigration attorneys or accredited representatives from nonprofit organizations recognized by the Department of Justice. We are entering a period of extremely high stakes where the combination of the Dignity Act's introduction in June 2025, the potential for executive action on essential workers, and the aggressive clearing of the USCIS backlog means that the landscape is shifting under our feet. This is a time for cautious optimism because we haven't seen this much momentum for reform in decades, but more importantly, it is a time for aggressive preparation. You do not want to be the person who waited until the law passed to start looking for old rent receipts only to find you lost them. You want to be the person who is ready to file on day one and be first in line. At U.S. Immigration Insight, we are committed to doing the heavy lifting for you by tracking these developments daily, reading the 500-page bills so you don't have to, monitoring the visa bulletin instantly when it drops, and tracking the field office processing times to tell you which cities are moving fast and which are stuck. If you found this deep dive analysis helpful, please give this video a thumbs up right now, because it helps the YouTube algorithm show this critical information to other families who are living in fear and need to know their rights. Subscribe to U.S. Immigration Insight and turn on your notifications. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Do you think the Dignity Act is a fair compromise? And would you accept legal status and safety if it meant you could never become a U.S. citizen and never vote? Or is that creating a second-class citizenship? Also, let me know what your current processing time is and which field office you are waiting on, because sharing your timeline helps others know what to expect. Stay strong, stay informed, keep your documents ready, and keep fighting for your American dream, because the path is not easy, but for the first time in a long time, the path is becoming clearer. I am your host from U.S. Immigration Insight, and I will see you in the next update.